Welcome to the Conduit Deeper podcast, a podcast that takes a deep dive into the details that surround our current sermon series, from current events to fascinating finds to conversations that take us deeper into the Word. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to the Deeper Podcast. My name is Mo, Executive Pastor at Conduit Church, joined each and every week with our lead pastor, Darren Tyler, when he's in town. And he's back.
I'm back.
And we're on a roll.
I'm back for like the rest of the year.
Ooh, I like that. It's good because there's a lot going on the rest of the year.
That's kind of why I'm back for the rest of the year. I canceled everything I had. I think I'm speaking at like a couple of things out of town, but they're both in the United States. So
no, that's good. We've got a lot coming up. Besides holidays, we've got Halloween. Nobody celebrates that. No, that's not true. Our kids love that. They want the candy.
But you and I cannot participate unless there's...
Yeah, no, I'm sure there's some sugar-free candy options out there that I've come across. This is helpful.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they're exactly delicious, but they do in a pinch.
Yeah, no, I found some delicious ones.
Yeah, what I'd like to find is some French fries that have that. You know what I mean? Like some sort of like
guilt-free,
shame-free, French fries. Because I don't have a sweet tooth, but man, I got a salty tooth. Like I could literally start a can of Pringles.
The whole sleeve, just go for it.
And nothing but a can of shame. Like when I'm done with it, but I'm done with that. I'm walking away from it. But I'll say this: if they were handing out Pringles at Halloween, I'd be 100% knocking on doors.
Gluten-free, fat-free Pringles.
Yeah, but it obviously turns out we got bigger problems in our country than we have just my Pringles problem. But
we got Halloween coming up, we got Thanksgiving coming up, we got Christmas coming up, we got New Year's coming up, and in the middle of all of that is an election. In 13 days, we have a general election, presidential election. 13 days from the time of this recording.
Doesn't it feel like that it just snuck up on us? And here, but I feel like we've been in a campaign for 4 years.
We have.
As a country.
Yeah. It's like the hurry up and wait. And then I feel like after we have election day, it's going to be hurry up and wait.
Yeah.
With 4 states saying this week, it's going to take them 4 days to know the outcome of their election results.
And what are those 4 states?
Man, I have to look it up real quick.
Guess Pennsylvania,
I believe,
Georgia.
Yes.
Those are my guesses. Arizona? I'm trying to think of the ones that couldn't count votes last time.
North Carolina and Virginia, I think those round out the 4.
Yeah.
Somebody can fact check that. But it's swing states, of course.
Yeah, and regardless of which ones they are, we got 50 of those things, and 4 of them somehow, can't count votes. It takes extra time.
I don't quite understand all of the details behind all that. I'm sure there's folks listening that absolutely understand why it's an issue, but it should not be an issue.
No, I mean, the understanding I have is that, and I think you could probably cross-reference this, that the ones that have the most mail-in ballots are the ones that take the longest to count. So they're, right now, whoever, they're licking a stamp. I don't even know where to get a stamp anymore, let alone how to mail something.
You can get them at the post office.
How long has it been since you've been in a post office? Do you know what I mean?
Literally years.
I don't even know. I think I know where one post office is now, but
you can buy them at Kroger.
But think about how antiquated that is. We're counting on the United States Postal Service, which can't get my Amazon packages to me,
right?
To get ballots to where they're supposed to be. That's a little bit of a fatal flaw in that strategy. But my point is, I think that what they're saying is, with the amount of mail-in ballots,
slows it down.
That like Aunt Dorothy or whoever's counting votes at the main office is probably doing it like the librarian would have done it, like licking her finger and pulling apart the ballot and counting them and opening them so that would be, I suppose, why.
True.
It's taken 4 days, but that's also how long it takes to count votes, like in banana republics. Someone's driving down with a box, of stuff and dropping it off, and somebody's grandma's over there counting them. It's a fascinating thought that supposedly the nation on earth that leads the world in technology is still hand counting paper ballots.
Yeah, it's bad. Well, I early voted this week, which was kind of exciting.
Now the line was long for you, right?
The line was not long for me.
Okay,
I was in and out in 5 minutes. However, within that 5 minutes of me participating, walking out, the line was very long. And my wife went yesterday, and the line was long for her. She said she waited about 45 minutes.
Interesting.
We're 2 weeks in advance here.
Right. There's reports everywhere right now that the one thing that is different this election is that it doesn't mean anything other than more Republicans are early voting than ever. So that doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be more Republicans voting. It just means that more Republicans, conservatives are actually going early as opposed to waiting to Election Day, which was a little bit of a mixed message from the Republican candidate because over the years he has been very vocal at one point about vote on Election Day, don't vote early, but now the Republican Party is saying no, you get in there and vote now. Like don't waste your time and don't wait. So it seems like that's happening across the country, that the percentage of Republicans early voting has significantly increased across the board, across all states.
Yes. And I was encouraged as I was in there for the brief time that I was to see several fellow conduits participating, which is just encouraging, So you made a statement on Sunday that kind of preempted the teaching. And I felt like it was warranted. I felt like it was informational, and was bold in the sense that these are issues that need to be discussed. And you made a statement basically that these are the 4 issues that every Christian should consider for Election Day, and basically kind of giving a bit of a roadmap on how we should think in regards to candidates. And those 4 things were regarding free speech, abortion, family, and the courts, which we discussed last week on this podcast. So that was helpful. How did you distill it down to those 4 things?
So it's obviously not those 4 are the only 4.
Sure, not the only 4.
And, as I said on Sunday, this is not meant to be comprehensive. I mean, I've only got so much time on a Sunday, but what I was really focusing on were what issues are actually affecting the most people. So abortion 100% is affecting tens of millions of children. So that's on the front. Free speech affects everybody, including those who say it's a privilege and we should have to earn it. It affects everybody. The courts, I think, is a sleeper issue that should be on the front of everybody's mind, because whatever candidate you have, I in the early days of my life, I would have focused primarily on, will this candidate do something to save the lives of unborn children, for instance? And I look back, and whether it was George W. Bush, Ronald Reagan, some of these conservative giants, they did nothing to stop abortion in our country. And it's mostly because they can't, and not to say that they would, I don't know if they would have or not, but it's got to be done in Congress. Congress does not have the willpower to do something. And so then it's been left to the courts, which is why the courts are so important, because if you go back and look over the last 4 years, after Trump's term, appointing 3 different justices, those are going to be there till after I'm dead, most likely. And they are the ones that are going to either adjudicate or legislate from the bench. And that was what I was trying to make a point on Sunday, is that progressives, they are fully comfortable with the courts legislating from the bench. In fact, one of the reasons they were so angry about the Roe v. Wade being overturned was not because it was against the Constitution, because it was against the tradition. The precedent, I believe, is the language that they would use. Well, the precedent has been. So they're not even saying that's what the law says. They're saying this is what precedent said. That, precedent also allowed slaves, in the Supreme Court. So precedent is not a good way to adjudicate from the bench. So that's the main difference, is will they put justices in place that would legislate or adjudicate? Adjudicate simply means I'm looking at the law, and this is what the law says, and this is what it doesn't say. Which is why, by the way, I was really intrigued by Robert F. Kennedy as a candidate, but would not have been able to pull the trigger for him because, even though he shares a lot of the same values we would around free speech, he does not around the courts, and would be not appointing the kinds of justices, at least as far as I could tell, that are going to adjudicate and not legislate.
Yeah, it's true. Jumping back to the free speech point, I don't know if you saw this, but the Babylon Bee, they sued California.
So they actually did this, or they did it in Babylon Bee world? So this is an actual thing?
No, they sued the state of California because the state of California passed 2 laws that censor online content, including political satire and parody. This was something Gavin Newsom signed, and it basically made for their website to not.
So it would make political satire, including The Onion, by the way, then, would be considered illegal?
Yes. And so the Alliance Defending Freedom filed a lawsuit in California about them censoring this online content, political satire, parody, and they won. They won the lawsuit.
Well, yeah, of course they did. I mean, that's not a small thing, too.
Yeah.
It's probably why, and that's not probably, it's 100% why, when you look at what's happening especially since the beginning days of COVID, one of the first moments of courage you started to see out there were from comedians.
Yes. And
comedians know that their job depends on the laws allowing them to offend people. Because that's kind of what this new standard was, right? Is if it's offensive to somebody, then it shouldn't be allowed. As if, it's a very narcissistic approach. But because, I mean, I'm experienced at this. There's nothing I ever say on a Sunday that doesn't offend at least somebody.
Sure.
And usually a lot, offend somebody a lot. So if the standard is offending somebody, then we're all hosed, which is where the comedians came in, everybody from Dave Chappelle, Now, I did notice, Jerry Seinfeld came out this week. I've lost so much respect for my friend, Jerry Seinfeld. That's not my friend. Because he actually was saying, the woke left has ruined comedy, and he took, an enormous amount of flack for it, and then he just folded like a napkin this week saying he was wrong about that. But he wasn't wrong. That's why guys like Chappelle and Rogan, Bill Maher, people that pretty much would not agree with us remotely as it relates to abortion, Christianity. I mean, Bill Maher made a stinking documentary is basically saying you and I are nut jobs because we're Christians. But the one place we would agree on is he has the right to say that without being silenced. And I have the right to say that he is not correct without being silenced. And that is why free speech matters in this country. I've been in too many countries where free speech is not allowed. And one of the underpinnings of anything, whether it's communism, Marxism, socialism, is it's underpinned by coercion and lies. And so you have to control the narrative to control the government, or for the government to maintain control. And our founding fathers had the wisdom to say that is that Christianity in general is underpinned not by coercion and lies, but by truth and love. And both of those require me to be able to speak. And by the way, risking offending somebody with it. You can't think even if you can't risk offending somebody. So it's important that the courts are, whether or not they're Christians, but at least to have justices in place that respect that and that right to speech. And so that the Babylon Bee can, make funny or unfunny. It's up to, humor's in the eye of the beholder. Some people find them hilarious, some people don't. But if you make that illegal, that's Cuba.
Yeah. It also came out this week. Did you see Matt Taibbi and Paul Thacker put out another little special report of something that they found? They're basically exposing this group called the Center for Countering Digital Hate.
Oh, no.
It's a lobbyist group out of the UK that is advising the Harris campaign. And one of their chief topics that they're addressing shows documents that this political front from the UK that's helping the Harris campaign on the US side, one of their objectives is called Kill Musk's Twitter. That's the bullet point. And it lists all the ways that it needs to be and how it should be.
So not killing Musk's Twitter account, but the company Twitter itself.
Yeah, X, yes. And one of their main drivers is through advertising focus meaning to lobby companies to pull advertising from Twitter so that it can no longer be funded.
Wow.
So the head of this group is on the Harris-Waltz advisory committee out of the UK. So not to mention that there's like some international interference here.
I mean, there's a reason we overthrew the UK. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever been to the 4th of July? Like, there was a whole reason we did the Declaration of Independence. We didn't want the Brits, telling us how to live our lives.
And so the gloves are all the way on or off, however you want to say that phrase. But to say that free speech is not an issue in this election is naive at best.
Oh, it's patently false. When you hear and listen, when you hear in the political dialogue in the weeks to come, you'll hear abortion framed as a right, that this right was, quote unquote, right was taken away from women, and you'll hear free speech framed as a privilege, that we ought to, if we don't earn this privilege, then it should be taken from us. So abortion is not a privilege; it's a right. Free speech is not a right; it's a privilege. That ought to be enough right there to say, I don't know what this candidate, I don't like this candidate, I like this candidate, whatever, but if I'm voting for this, that's what I'm voting for, is abortion as a right, and me being able to speak is a privilege.
On an interview on NBC this week, it might have been yesterday, Kamala Harris said that she doesn't believe in religious exemptions for abortions, basically saying that any Christian hospitals, healthcare providers, businesses, etc., would be forced to provide or cover abortion if she got her way, essentially, removing all religious exemptions.
Wow,
that's a big deal as well.
It's a massive deal, which is why, and I don't know that we should go there. So here I'll say this: a lot of what you and I talk about on this podcast, especially in the last year, 5 years, I guess. These are things we would have talked about whether we were on microphone or off microphone. It's not that I never had opinions about this stuff. It's that we probably need to be talking about this stuff publicly so that as shepherds, as parishioners, like I'm not the shepherd of the church down the street, so I don't get to say what is or isn't, but I do get to say with this one, with Conduit Church, what we're talking about publicly. And if we are not arming our people with the information that is needed, then if we're not giving that information, they're going to get it from somewhere. Again, free speech, they should be able to get it from somewhere, anywhere. That's right. But if we then cede the high ground, so to speak, to godless people, and the only people speaking into this are godless people, are they going to get, the full story with it? And the answer, of course, is no, which is exactly why we needed to be talking about this. And for me to say it on a Sunday, to be honest, it was a little unnerving for me because it just felt different to me. But I realized that was like some physiological thing. It wasn't logical at all, because logically, why would I talk about it on a Wednesday on a podcast, but not on a Sunday in front of our entire church family? And the answer is there's no reason that I wouldn't do that. So even my discomfort with it was still some remnants of something somewhere in my, physiology, emotions, whatever, that was not logical, that I bought into at some point, that I'm done with that. Like, that's long gone from me. But the remnants were even still there. Like, I was nervous about saying that out loud. Because sometimes on a Sunday, am I talking to you or talking for you? And sometimes the answer is yes, right? Like, I would think in our church family that most people by now know where I would stand on something. But on the other hand, there are some people maybe in the church that need to, hey, it's okay to say that I'm not voting for any type of blue party, Democratic Party thing, and to say that out loud. Of course, the framework, and nobody's done this to me recently, but can I be a Democrat and still be a Christian? That's not even the right question. The question is what party, what policies are going to best stem the tide of evil in our nation? The Republican Party is not perfect. But the years of coddling to the left to make sure the left felt like we were being nice and being loving, and then punching to the right so that they can see that I'm being unbiased, those days are gone. There's definitely some things in the Republican Party that deserve to be punched, and there are some things in the Democratic Party that need to be body slammed. And so coddling to the left, punching to the right didn't serve us well as a church. And there are still pastors out there doing that. I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but that's kind of what Matt Chandler in Dallas did this week.
Yeah, let's just go all the way in. I mean, Matt Chandler, who has a big microphone, a big platform.
Big biceps.
Larger biceps of late. Made a statement, on Sunday. A lot of pastors are making statements on Sundays right now.
Yeah. Some in our community as well.
Yeah, of course, across the country and across our community. And if you missed what Darren had to say on Sunday, it's on our YouTube. We cut that out and posted that specifically. You can go watch that if you need any clarity on where we stand as a church. But Matt made a statement as well, and he did a lot of that, the coddling the left and punching to the right. I have a clip, and
let's just play it.
Can play the clip. It's about 40 seconds, and this is what he said. He's absolutely irate in this clip. Yeah. So,
and maybe I shouldn't, but I want to preface this: Jesus loves Matt Chandler. Matt Chandler loves Jesus. He loves his wife, his family, his children. He's going to be in heaven with us. And I vehemently disagree with what he says, not just conceptually, but even factually, the way that it was framed. I vehemently disagree, and I'll explain why.
In 1972, go read their charter. Not a single word about God or abortion in there. They were losing elections. They developed a strategy in the 70s to co-opt us and make us their people. They know we're easily manipulated. We are easily worked into a frenzy. We can be controlled by them. And that's what they did. And they are not for us. They do not all believe what we believe. This is a strategy. So I feel used by, when they talk about us and to us, I feel in my guts, like, get my name out of your mouth. You do not represent me.
So the he's referring to is the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Specifically. And the topic is abortion.
Yeah.
When he references 1972, 1973.
Right.
I don't know that he gave much context as of what exactly was going on in the early 70s.
No, well, so I've listened to I think almost all of it, and he does not. And what made me, I guess, angry viscerally about that was that's a talking point that comes 100% from Planned Parenthood, from hardcore progressive pro-abortion, that the quote-unquote Republican Party was never against that until the 70s. And the answer was, of course they weren't, because Roe v. Wade wasn't in the Supreme Court at that point. Like, it wasn't on the front of everybody's mind because it was illegal. So did it become a political issue? Yes, because it was made a political issue. And as I said on Sunday, that it's not that the church became more political, it's that the political became more church, right? When you say that the only reason that a Christian, whatever, is a Republican is because we have been used and co-opted. I find that insulting. Are you saying that I'm so stupid that I've been manipulated by, because that's what I'm hearing, that I have been manipulated by them? You've heard me say, our church has heard me say, that there are conservatives out there that are not Christians, okay? And that you can be a conservative without being a Christian. I don't think you can be a Christian without being a conservative, because being a Christian is conserving the morals, the dignity, the beauty of the scriptures of Christianity. We are conserving that. But to suggest that I am so stupid that I was manipulated by Republican Party is insulting to me. And again, I have said it. I believe it. That I wish that there was a party more conservative than the Republicans, because I'd be in that party. But there isn't. Right now, there's just two. Maybe someday in our world, we'll have more than one. More than this two-party system, which it's a whole other conversation. But to hear him say that on 3 weeks before an election. Like, it kind of, like, it puts a Christian in a position, then do I not vote at all?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't hear him come to any kind of conclusion, and I doubt he'll never hear this, but if he does, I would love to hear him say, okay, so this is what you do. This is how you vote.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing he alluded to at the end was just basically the Sermon on the Mount. Love your enemies.
Sure. But do you vote for them?
Act decent as a Christian and think for yourself and get along with your community, which, quite frankly, is a message I'm hearing, even around town here in Nashville too, in this region. I mean, yeah. I guess there's two sides of this coin. There's two sides of this conversation. You can either draw some hard lines, speak very boldly and courageously about this is the things that we should consider during this election and call them out directly as far as issues.
Yeah.
Or ignore that there's a general election, that it's a cultural war, not talk about it, and just encourage believers just to be nice during this season. That's an option that many churches seem to be taking.
But and I've heard the pastor down the road that I love and respect as well, sort of frame it in that way. And it's weird because there's nothing that he said that I didn't fundamentally disagree with.
Right. Yes.
It's like the right information, but the wrong implication.
Yeah.
So the information is love your neighbors. The implication is then you can just vote for whoever you want to because you don't want to offend or hurt anybody. Now, that's not what was said, but that seemed to be what was implied. The idea that I want both red and blue in my church, speaking of Democrats and Republicans, sounds great on paper. What I want when I think of that is I want people that will stand for truth, that will stand for, again, lessening the evil. Salt, the purpose of salt being salt in the world isn't to make it taste better. It's to make the decay slow better. And we think of salt now as like I'm putting it on my fries to make them taste better, but that's not the context that Jesus was referring to salt. It was to slow decay. And slowing the decay does not mean voting for someone who will not only look the other way with abortion, but make it the central platform for them. And that is, it's maddening to me to see that at the Democratic National Convention, they don't even make it a secret. Like, it's not like the Bill Clinton Democrats of the 90s. This is not making abortion rare and safe, which I also reject, but they now reject that. As a platform, that is what is rejected by the Republican Party. And you have to ask yourself, I have to ask myself, in this election, why is it that the free thinkers that in our society that aren't Christians, the Elon Musks of the world, the Joe Rogans of the world, the ones that think Robert F. Kennedy, Tulsi Gabbard, why are they card-carrying Democrats speaking out against what the Democratic Party is? And it's because the Democratic Party has changed. Like when I hear you blue versus red, whatever, it's almost like they're just referring to an outdated version of this from the 90s, and they haven't caught up to what the reality of it is. And somebody said once, if you wonder what your enemy wants to do, maybe just listen to them because they'll tell you. And the Democratic Party has told us what they want to do. And, opening the borders. There was a piece this morning in the Free Press, Barry Weiss, another card-carrying Democrat, fired from the New York Times for being too conservative, which is utterly fascinating. But front page of Free Press this morning is a story that illegal sex trafficking in America skyrocketed when the current administration opened the borders. And some of the evidence of that is the ads that are on TikTok, the ads online for sex trade, prostitution, in just the last 4 years has skyrocketed in Texas and has been now in Spanish, not just English, most of them in Spanish, because the amount of young women that are being trafficked across the border is officially incalculable. So that stuff we're talking about happening in Dubai, the stuff we're happening in the United Arab Emirates that we're actually involved with setting these women free is happening in our own country because the Democratic Party made a political point to swing open the borders, wrapped it in virtue, and the result of that is not saving the lives of millions of women, it's ruining the lives of millions of women. In our country, that is, again, I only had time for 4 issues on Sunday, But if we're going to continue to let the border czar open the borders like this, what we're doing is forcing women into prostitution against their will because of a Democratic Party policy that was put in place with it.
Someone mentioned on Sunday, why didn't you not address the Second Amendment?
Yeah.
Why are we pro or against guns?
Which is a legitimate question.
Fair question.
And I think that I've taken my jacket off on Sundays enough to people would know where I stand on that based on what's on my hip. But
Yeah.
But that's an issue that I only had time for 4.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't. So funny. I wouldn't make that a central issue to the election because, mostly because I don't think it's actually in danger in our nation. Just because I live out in Marshall County now, so I promise you, it's not in danger in Marshall County. Do not rob anybody on my road. You will regret that a lot. But that's a great example, though, of a party issue where a justice, will they rule from the bench what the Constitution says, or will they create a new law from the bench based on what they want the Constitution to say? Yeah. So it all goes back to the courts. That's why I said of those four pillar issues, the courts are in that because they affect everything.
I want to go back to something you said just a second ago. It was the second time you referenced fries. So we need to get you some fries today.
I don't think we do, man.
You mentioned it twice.
I know.
And it also,
but I'm like a heroin addict talking about heroin. Like you don't go get me a bag of black tar. Like I need to. Well, I need to go to Plays of Hope and do 12 steps for French fries.
Well, you mentioned salt, some extra salt on your fries, and all I could think about was former President Donald J. Trump requesting the exact same thing.
Oh man, what does that say about me?
He served some fries to some people this week in Pennsylvania in McDonald's. Gotta love it.
Did you find that? So I found that. I don't know what I found that
hilarious. First,
okay, it was hilarious.
I can't wait to see SNL this week because I feel like they're gonna.
Yeah,
they have to do something with that.
But I think maybe
it was brilliant.
Well, maybe that's why I'm so mad about it because it was brilliant. But it definitely is like, okay, that's politics at its lowest base form. We all know that he has never put an apron on to cook anything in his life, but he's there, a man of the people. Man of the people.
Learned how to work the fry maker, I guess this was called. He was working the fry station. He had very good questions I would have asked if I was standing there. Like, how long does it sit in there? Yeah. How much salt do I put on it? How many fries do I put in the case? And then he had one of the guys was showing him how to do it and puts the fries in the box and then the box in the bag. And then he looks in the back. He said, man, this is skimpy on this product. Put more in there. He wanted more fries. He loves fries. It's his favorite thing in the world.
I could eat them by the fistful. Now, the question he didn't ask, at least I don't think he did, is the one that everybody in America really wants the answer to. What's up with the ice cream machine?
Right.
In my days of addiction to food, how many times would I pull up to a McDonald's, right, to get like a
national issue
to get ice cream? The ice cream machine's broken. Like 50-50 shot of whether I'm going to get ice cream. Because that. If you want to win my vote for presidency, fix the ice cream problem at McDonald's, and I'm all in for that.
Well, I thought it was interesting. It was well played by the GOP to pull that off. You got a lot of great press out of it. Course.
It'll be interesting to see. And I say, look, nobody is dumb enough to think that he is a guy that would have worked at a McDonald's. And so, I get what he's saying. He's making a statement that, and by the way, what you talk about flip the script. The Democratic Party for decades, the party of John F. Kennedy, they were the party of the working class. That's why the unions were all Democrat, because they were the ones, and it was the Republicans that were the ones that were the elite, wealthy, Upper West Side. And in a weird twist, those roles have reversed, where the main talking points coming from the Democratic Party are coming from people like Taylor Swift, who has also never worn an apron and made fries in her life. Who is not on the ground level, couldn't, if you would have put a gun to her head and said, how much is a gallon of milk, she would have zero idea because she's not on the ground level of it. That is flipped now to where people like my family growing up, my family to this day in Nebraska, who does not listen to this podcast, because I don't think my dad even knows how to listen to a podcast, but they feel like he understands them. And he doesn't, because he can't. He just can't. But he at least understands what issues matter to them, and that's enough for them, because they can't afford a house. They can't afford. I can't afford a house right now, like in this market with interest rates, and like it goes back to the Bill Clinton of the '90s when George H.W. Bush was making about all these sophisticated things, and I'll never forget him. He's like, no, it's about the economy, stupid. That was just a one-line throwaway line that became that framed his entire presidency, and it won him the election. And if people that are, whatever else we want to make this about, at the end of the day, people are going to vote based upon what affects them the most. And whatever party can get that out there, which is why I went back to those 4 issues. The speech, you don't even know it. Maybe you do, but it is maybe the most important issue on this ballot is that. These courts may be the most important issue on the ballot. But all those are even too sophisticated when it comes down to, I went and bought a battery for my son's car that cost $260.
Are you kidding?
And the guy behind the counter, he's got his Carhartt hoodie on, bigger. I wouldn't fight him for anything. Lives in Maury County, said, yeah, in just the last year, this battery has gone up by $60. And since the time I've worked here, it's gone up in 2 years, has gone up $100 for a car battery that cost an extra $100. That hurts. That's what people are feeling right now. And as the old economist said, inflation is the cost of all that free money. And we printed money, and this is exactly what's supposed to happen, is that inflation is supposed to run rampant when you print trillions of dollars. And in fairness, Trump started it, Biden continued it.
Yep.
But printing money does not help us in the long term. It destroys us, and that is on the ballot as well. It's about the economy, stupid. And my hope is that President Trump, that whoever ends up in charge of Congress, learned their lesson and stops it and gets this national debt under control so we can get our own personal lives under control.
You see, he's talking about eliminating taxes for starting with there's like service workers, like policemen, firemen.
Like just eliminating income tax on them?
Income tax, yeah. Military. And it's opened up a discussion to where he's considering the idea of eliminating it across the board.
Eliminating income tax altogether. It'll never happen.
Oh, it'll never happen. But he's talking about it.
Yeah. Sounds
because
good
it
on
opens
paper.
a door. It
Yeah.
opens a door to say, hey, first responders, healthcare workers, whatever category they come up with.
Yeah.
That's what he was saying to entrepreneurs, like business owners, even as well.
Right.
It's the first time it's been as a talking point in I don't know how many years of an election.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, I suppose it starts with because Vice President Harris was her promise was she's going to offer forgivable loans, which is another way of saying free money to black males. Which is interesting because the target was going after young males that are voting for Trump, but she specifically went after young black males with that. She can't do that either. I don't think that would happen.
No.
But by the way, I would still vote at this point in my life. Still, I think just a simple flat tax, across the board. That's an opinion. That has nothing to do with theology. I couldn't make a biblical case for that. It just seems to make the most common sense because, you and I as pastors every year we spend money on somebody to tell us, and it's like we're playing Wheel of Lack of Fortune. We're just spinning to see how much we're going to get hit. Because when you hear people talk about, pastors getting a free ride and churches need to be paying taxes, can I just tell you, that is baloney. We pay taxes. You and I pay. We are treated as self-employed as clergy, but we don't get the benefits of being self-employed. We actually get double dipped with it. So when you hear people, if you ever hear that nonsense being espoused by the left, and they usually will throw somebody like Kenneth Copeland under the bus, and whatever, that's a whole other conversation. But the average Joe pastor in the earth, we are getting taxed in a way that is not the way that regular self-employed people get taxed as part of the clergy. So, I mean, if you want to see our tax records, I mean, they're obviously they're out there, but we do pay taxes on that stuff. But if there was just a flat tax where I didn't have to pay somebody And like I said, I'm spinning this wheel just to see how much. And if I could just, like, I'm giving a tithe, then I'll just give 10% to the government and we just be done with it. I'd do that in a heartbeat just to get rid of all this nonsense.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation. It started with the no tax on tips. That's where it started, right? And then it's kind of grown into this other beast. Rogan is interviewing Trump on Friday, officially.
Oh, so it's happening.
This week. So I don't know if I don't know when it'll air, but I'm guessing going to turn that pretty quick.
I mean, doesn't he normally they just hit record and then just upload right after? I mean, I think that's how he does it.
I don't know. I'm sure they have it in the queue behind a bunch of other interviews. I don't know the process, but they are he's scheduled to be in Austin. I believe what I understand it to be is DJT with Rogan in Austin in his studio.
Can you imagine how many downloads that is going to get?
It's going to break every podcast record.
Everywhere.
Ever.
You talk about a change of tune. We've listened to him on and off. I've listened to him on and off since he was on the air, 15, 20 years ago, whenever that was. But he has said publicly he would never interview Trump. The fact that he's willing to do that now, because one thing we know about that guy, just based upon his decisions, is he's not doing it for the money or doing it for the likes. I mean, he has absolutely rejected all that stuff over the years, and he still managed to make $1 kajillion doing it. But for him to,
I'm excited for him to hit him hard, and ask the hard questions, really press in on even Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions that people have on the decisions that he made in his last presidency.
Yeah, that he needs to answer. I want him to answer, yeah. Someone said they saw somewhere that he had said that he was wrong about the vaccine, but I've not seen that. And if he'd said that, I'd be on the front page of every newspaper. But somebody emailed that to me, so I didn't.
They also reached out to the Harris campaign because they want to have her on too, because that would be fair, right? I mean, that would be great.
It'd be fair, and it would also be listened to widely. I would listen to it because if somebody could finally get both of them, for that matter, to answer actual questions and not stonewall with talking points. Watching her lately, even on like an NBC interview, is so cringe.
Oh man!
You know, the question that that an NBC reporter asked her was, he is not. You are the candidate because of the debate, because of his performance in the debate and his mental acuity. But you said, you went on after that debate saying that he's the president. I support him. Were you lying to us?
Oof! What a question.
Great question, because it's the question that everybody wants to ask. And she will not answer it, or she stonewalls with it. It's so uncomfortable because we all saw what we saw, including her. And I don't envy her, but I also would like her to be honest about it, and say, yeah, I saw it as well, and that's why I'm the candidate, because he is he is qualified for the job. He is everything you would want in a candidate. Like, are you kidding me? So why are you not? Why is he not the candidate? I would love somebody, including obviously our friend Dave Ramsey interviewed Trump. That their request to interview Harris is quote under review, which means it's not going to happen. But the fact that just anybody that could get her. And I think that would be part of why the Rogan thing would be great. Because, by the second or third hour, you're kind of wore down. You're kind of tired.
It's a lot.
It's like a deposition. Yeah. That's when you finally start to get to the bottom of the truth, is after you wear them down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I can't even imagine. If I were a betting person, I would bet in a million years she would never appear on the Rogan podcast.
2 Peter 3.
That's right. We're pastors.
You had 3 points that did tie into these discussions. And that's what I mentioned last week. This is what I love about this sermon series, is the fact that we can go through the Word. The Word goes through us and gives us insight into daily living for such a time as this.
It's what it was meant to be, this living and active Word of God that separates between the sword, the soul and the spirit, the sword that cuts through it all, that cuts through all the crap.
The delay of the Lord, the day of the Lord, and the way of the Lord. Well done.
As not Baptist as I am, sometimes I'm pretty proud of the Baptist points of a sermon.
It's great. It's great. The verse 9 is the delay of the Lord. It just jumps out, right? It says, "The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. Instead, he is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. And in the Message, it reads this way: God isn't late with his promise as some measure lateness. He is restraining himself on account of you, holding back the end because he doesn't want anyone lost. He's giving everyone space and time to change.
Yeah.
It's encouraging.
It is, because now that I'm married, my kids are grown, I just want Jesus to come back, like right now. Not like when I was younger, because I wanted to get married and have sex and all that stuff. But I want him to come back right now. And by the way, I gave a stat on Sunday that I was wrong about. And I said I couldn't quite remember, so fact check me. So I'm fact checking myself. And then I said that 18,000 people come to Christ every day in the world. That number was wrong. That's Africa. The world, it's 82,000 people every day. That's based on Frontier International and a couple other international organizations. So every day that Jesus delays, another 82,000 people step into the kingdom of God for eternity. So he doesn't want anyone to perish. So my selfishness, I want him to come back right now. But by his selflessness, he's waiting, just one more. And it inspires me then as a church that if I want Jesus to return, the best thing we can do is to go into all the nations, go to the unreached people of the world that he desperately wants to see come into the kingdom of God. So that's why we invest and double down in that stuff, because we're commanded to. But, so the opposite of Shia Islam, they say that you can hasten the return of the Mahdi, of their version of Messiah, whatever, by bloodshed in the streets. That's the Ayatollah's theology. Our theology with Christ says, no, we can hasten his return by preaching the goodness of Jesus and more people coming into the kingdom of God, not by force, but by love. So why do I go and spend months, it's overseas over the years? And why do we invest? I think by some estimates, again, it'll be $2 to $3 million that our church alone will invest into the global mission. It will hasten the return of Jesus.
Man, that's probably one of the reasons I got married so young, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. Better to marry than to burn with passion.
And it was the year 2000, so nobody knew. We got engaged in 99.
Oh, that's right. And there was all those books that Jesus was coming back.
Y2K was a whole thing. Like, what's going to happen when the calendar turns from the year 1999 to 2000? Is the world going to explode, blow up? Are all the computers just going to melt? Like, do you remember where you were December 31st, 1999? Like,
100%.
Everybody was waiting to see what would happen when the clock turned over. Like, are we still, like, everybody closes their eyes and then like, are we still here?
Yeah.
We're still here. And so I got engaged in 99 because I wanted to be married as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So we got married in the year 2000. I was 20 years old and it was trying to hasten.
Hasten the return or hasten
it all.
I'm remembering that we're broadcasting, so I'm going to step away from the jokes, especially with Micah sitting right across from us here. But
he's a married man with 2 children. So
it's funny you say that, because that was part of what I tried to touch on Sunday, but that because of stuff like that in our lifetime, we tend to, guys my age especially, tend to sort of, we don't discredit the return of Christ, but we don't talk about it as much because we get kind of caught up in some stuff. But Jesus said in the last day, Peter says here, in the last day, scoffers will come. He's not coming back. Everything's the same. It's always the way it's always been. And that's exactly what it feels like right now, that people will step away from that. And to me, that's not only, it's the reason why we need to be focused on it, because that's what he said would happen. And we don't want to be counted among the scoffers. And when you look at the world stage right now, things that, not Y2K, but there are things that have happened and are currently happening that are 100% prophetic, coming from, the prophets of old. And as you said, the prophecies that Jesus fulfilled in his first coming, the chances of those happening are zero, basically zero. The chances of him not coming back a second time then are less than zero.
North Korea has sent 11,000 troops to Russia.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What is going on? How has North Korea entered the chat all of a sudden?
Well, it means that Putin's running out of people to throw for cannon fodder onto the front lines. I mean, that's my estimation on it. I heard Condoleezza Rice throw a stat out this week that Putin has lost 120,000 men have been killed in Russia, 500,000 wounded since this war started. And the stat was that is more than the Soviet Union lost after World War II up until this war started. In other words, Stalin, Gorbachev, all these guys, like Lenin, all these leaders, they combined have not lost that many men. And then she goes on to say that, and these aren't in her words, the blue-eyed, blonde-haired boys in St. Petersburg. These are the poor, the criminals. Like he's literally throwing them as cannon fodder because he can. He doesn't need them, so he's using them to, weaken Ukraine. And what does it mean as far as biblical prophecy that North Korea is getting involved in that? It's like that there would be an entire world coalition coming together, not necessarily initially because they hate Israel, but they will get drug into Israel. Ezekiel says, when he talks about Gog and Magog, that I will put a hook in your jaw and drag you down into Israel. So it actually speaks of a country that, gosh, I don't want to have to deal with this, but I got to deal with this, so I'm going to go there anyway. Like that's Gog and Magog coming from the north. He speaks about, a 200 million man army that would march from the east. And of course, there's the question, is that like figurative or literal? But meanwhile, there's a country called China that is on the world stage right now that has well over 1 billion people. Easily could put together a 200 million man army and march across the Pan-American, not Pan-American, that's the one in America, the Pan-Asian highway, what we call it the Silk Road now. Like there's a road being built across through the Middle East that could easily transport that many men. So when you start to cross-reference Revelation, the prophets with what we see in our modern world, like we see things that are very plausible and possible right now that were never possible in human history before, except for right now in this moment.
Ukraine's frustrated. They're saying if NATO doesn't allow them in, they're going to go nuclear, which it's crazy talk.
It is crazy talk, and it's talk that we ought to take deadly seriously. Mm-hmm. And one more reason why I believe that the return of Christ, maybe this is one of the things that we've got to focus on, because that seems scary to hear that.
Yeah, Zelensky, that was him talking.
Yeah.
Basically threatening NATO.
Yeah.
To let them into the club, and if not, take matters in our own hands.
And what people have got to realize is one nuclear strike in Russia is not an isolated event. Like, they're going to respond, then we're going to be forced to respond.
Chain reaction.
I just finished a book right before I went to Nepal, and the title is, quote, Nuclear War. And it was 12 chapters that it basically was here's what could happen with one nuclear strike.
What's the author? Do you remember?
I can't remember the author's name.
It's a female, right?
It's a female.
Yeah, Rogan interviewed her.
Really?
I listened to her podcast with him.
Okay.
It's incredibly fascinating.
Frightening. I grew up in the world of the day after tomorrow, and we would practice nuclear drills at school. Like, it's going to do any good to be under your desk. Like, I'm going to get vaporized there, or I'm going to get vaporized on top of my desk. Well, either way, I'm vaporized. But one thing I'd never heard before and didn't know was that the president of the United States has approximately 6 minutes to make a decision.
Yes.
6 minutes.
Yeah, she breaks all that down.
It was
my word,
terrifying.
Yes.
And when I read it, I finished it and thought, this is what it meant when Paul said, comfort one another with these words, which is speaking about the return of Christ. In a world where you're not threatened with annihilation, those are not comforting words to know that Jesus is returning. But in a world where we are right now, where we need Jesus to return, if we're wrong about this, we're going to be extinct as a species. Like, humans will be extinct with this. There's never been a weapon formed by humans that was not actually used by the humans, ever, in the history of humanity. And one thing we know, humans are not different. We've not evolved. We have the same operating system we've had for thousands of years, which is this fallen world. And it only takes one little sawed-off rocket man to fire one missile that annihilates the whole world. And it's not just because that one strike alone would affect not just that community, but the communities around it, and then the response affects it. We have enough nuclear warheads to literally destroy the world within an hour.
Yeah, she documents all of that. It's fascinating read and listen. China has told their military to prepare for war this week. Specifically regarding Taiwan.
Yeah.
So I feel like, this is just my opinion, I feel like it's imminent that China and Taiwan tussle. And by Taiwan, that draws us in immediately.
Immediately.
And then, all bets are off as far as the chain reaction from there. But that is ramping up. And, we've been talking about China and Taiwan for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And every time it's like, okay, we'll move a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. It feels like it's really close to them actually making a move because we're in a very, very weak position.
Yeah, we're in an incredibly weak position, not just militarily, but technologically speaking. I mean, think about the fact that like the semiconductor industry, okay, that was invented in the United States, perfected in the United States by Intel. How on earth did we allow China to now become the centerpiece of semiconductor technology? That's in Taiwan right now. Why is Taiwan important to America? Way more important than Ukraine. It's that literally the backbone of this podcast is operated on the backs of semiconductors. That Taiwan, which is very, very vulnerable to China, is where the vast majority of those are created. The battery technology that the Biden administration makes the centerpiece of their green initiative, okay, again, invented in the United States, controlled by China. So even if it's not a military invasion of the United States, they can shut down the world, at least our world, with the technology that we invented and then signed over to them in the name of spreading capitalism. And by the way, that's not a Democrat thing. That's a Republican thing. That's across the world. We had this idea that if we could, and this was, I think you go back to Reagan and Bush, that if we bring capitalism to China, that the people will experience the benefits of capitalism and overthrow communism. And by the way, the reason they would believe that is they thought, because that's what happened in South Korea, that'll happen in China. But here's the major difference. This is Darren's hot take for the podcast. The major difference between China and South Korea was Christianity was also introduced into South Korea. So it wasn't capitalism that caused people to cry out for freedom. It was Christianity. And inside of China, it was communism. And it wasn't prosperity that would cause people to reach out for freedom. It would have been Christianity, but it was being squashed by the communist government because, again, communism is built on coercion and lies. Christianity is built on truth and love. So they tried to squash it. And so now we have a Chinese government led by a guy named Xi Jinping, who is a godless, atheistic tyrant. And we look back at, now I don't know I'm not nearly smart enough to know what the United States should have done with China. But what we did do with them, and it's one of the reasons why Trump's policies about putting tariffs on China matter so much. Like it might hurt our economy in the near future, but it could, by destroying the Chinese economy, could actually help us more than hurt us in the long term.
65% of all semiconductors are built in Taiwan, in the entire world.
65%.
That is, that's such a large amount. Like you're saying, like all of our tech probably in this room has computer chips from Taiwan, rather.
Yeah, made in Taiwan, and obviously China knows that just as well as we do. Why do you think China thinks it's so important? They need it just like we do. They have been slowly building out this Silk Road Initiative, not as an act of peace and prosperity for the world. It is an act of self-preservation for their own nation.
The delay of the Lord, the day of the Lord, and the way of the Lord, and that is our hope, right?
Absolutely.
The way of the Lord is our only hope in all of this.
Yeah. And I'm going to touch on that this week because what is the way of the Lord? I had to rush that. But the way of the Lord is right there in that last verse, which is, don't let the lawless ones, don't fall for their error. But then he goes on to say, but grow in grace. And that's what I'm going to talk about this Sunday. What does that actually mean to grow in grace? As Jesus people, whatever's happening in the government, we have a lot of opinions about it. We're going to vote accordingly. And then we're going to live our lives as if Jesus is Lord of Lords and King of Kings, and growing in grace. The literal last words, recorded words of Peter before he is going to be crucified upside down according to church history, verse 18, but grow in the grace and knowledge of our Lord and Savior Jesus. To him be both glory both now and forever. The last words of Peter. He is going to be executed unfairly and unjustly for defying government orders, and his words live forever in our hearts right now to grow in grace and knowledge of our Lord Jesus Christ. And that's what we're going to talk about this coming Sunday.
It's great. Man, we got into a lot this week. Prepared, not scared. Informed by the word, not formed by culture. Stay focused. Then these next 13 days, these next 3 months, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not over at the election.
No. And can I add, I do want to add this. When it comes to the pastors that are saying what we wouldn't say, or like Matt Chandler, I don't know Matt, he doesn't know me, but we need to pray for them. And I'm sure they need to be prayed for us as well. We are not enemies. We just look at the same issue with a different opinion, with a different way of viewing the world. I think I'm right. I wouldn't say it if I didn't. I think he's wrong. I wouldn't say it. But the truth is we have one thing in common, that is Jesus Christ, him crucified, buried, resurrected. So I'm praying for pastors like that. I'm not angry at them. I don't hate them. I learned a lot during the COVID years, being lectured by, the shepherds for sale. I am not Holy Ghost Jr. It's not my job to judge or convict them of sin. That's Jesus's job. My job, as Paul said, is as much as it is in my power, right, to love and to be at peace with one another with them. So, I pray for them. And pray that whoever heard those words from him would vote accordingly to the principles of God, and not to trying to make people happy. But I'll let Jesus figure that out, and we'll speak what we know to be truth, believe to be truth, and hold on to growing in grace and knowledge of Jesus.
Great. Yeah, whether it's us putting something out into the ether or someone else, we want to be able to give some context and some insight into what that means, because it's promoted out there, it's on a platform, and it gets a lot of views, and a lot of opinions come from it, and so we just want to be able to address some of these things head on.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Deeper Podcast. Whether you're listening or you're watching, we appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we ask that you do that. If you haven't left a review or a 5-star on Spotify or iTunes, would you do that as well? It helps get this content into the algorithms for more people to listen and to follow and to be informed. Again, thank you. We'll see you again here next week.